And here we are, the final video. I've been thinking about the doomer versus optimist debate and how people act like it's just a matter of attitude, like they're two sides, two teams, and you join them based on whichever one resonates more with you based on like what kind of person you are. But like that's not how reality works. What's true is just what's true. You don't get to choose that based on like, oh, well, this one makes me happier. And so for me, what this series has been about is it's not to make people feel a certain way, like, or well, what it is about, rather, is developing an understanding of our situation, of the full situation, and of accepting that because resisting it doesn't actually make it go away or doesn't change anything. And then whatever conclusion about precisely where we're headed is up to you, as well as how you feel and act about it. And so then what I did was I summarized for myself, and here they are some of the major points that one might draw from this whole series. First of all is, of course, the whole dead end strategy thing. I'm not even going to go into that because I've said it so many times. So then the next one, gratitude. I think that people, when they realize how detrimental civilization is to the planet, then they just want to reject it because they're like ashamed to have been a part of this all. But the thing is, the damage that led up to our technologies has already been done. And so you may as well enjoy what it has brought into existence. Things like hot showers and ice cream. Because also they're going to be going away and we will miss them when they're gone. And it's kind of a crazy thing to just realize what a rare moment we are in right now. A lot of the things that are part of our daily lives were not known to people 100 years ago, and no one 100 years from now will be talking about them. I think that so much is going to be lost. Even if there are still like tales of when people had airplanes and FaceTime, most of the elements of our culture are going to get forgotten because everyone's just going to be so busy dealing with all the stuff that is coming up over the next few decades. So most of it is not going to get carried on. And then whatever we do talk about, it is probably going to be so distorted. Um, Then, in addition to gratitude, is being comfortable with uncertainty. For example, in the past, people thought that we would reach the maximum population that we could feed back in like the 70s, but then it turned out that, they came up with synthetic fertilizer and industrial agriculture and the green revolution, and suddenly we've been churning out more and more, but like that's now reaching its end. And then we thought that in the early 2000s, we would start seeing energy descent and the decline of oil accessibility, but then we came up with fracking. So we keep finding ways to kick the can and extend the runway a little bit further. But of course, that only works for so long, and eventually, the consequences of our actions are going to catch up with us. And that also, in terms of what is uncertain, is how people and countries will react when things really go into decline. For example, when COVID hit, or like a few months before COVID, if someone said there was going to be this virus that spread around the world, it would have been anybody's bet how countries were going to handle or mishandle it, and companies. And so it is the same way with all of the crises that are going to be hitting this century. It's a real wild card. Um, and then also, in terms of our fellow humans, once you realize that civilization is the problem, the thing is, you realize you can't really blame any particular individual or group because we're all complicit. We all participate in this and we all rely on it for the most part, except for the small percent of people who are living indigenously. So, plus, we're going to have bigger issues to deal with than figuring out who's at fault. And who needs to quit using their machine dryer to dry their clothes and should be hanging it up in the sunshine instead to reduce their energy footprint. Like, I think in a decade and beyond, we're going to be like, I can't believe I actually cared about that and thought that it was going to make a difference. And now here we are having to muddle through big challenges that are right at our doorstep. And then another thing is finally realizing that this is not for everyone. If you have watched this entire series, you are part of a small percent of the population that feels like, I don't even, because I don't want to say it's courage. I don't know that I'm courageous. I was just like strangely curious. But whatever, you felt the compulsion to look into this. And the thing is, in most cases, people are really only open to information of a few types. One is the kind that brings pure delight. That's when you are scrolling on your feed and you see kitten videos and stuff. Like, who doesn't want to get sent some of that and consume that content? And then also, the other rule, if you want to be sharing a message that people will be willing to receive, is that if it's negative, you at least need to offer something that they can do about it. So it's like 5 ways to know if you have this condition, but then if you do, here are 5 things you can do about it. And like, there isn't that much that you can do about this, although there's a little bit, which I will suggest at the end. So yeah, it's not really, people don't like to process this kind of stuff. It isn't fun for them, and it feels pointless if they can't do anything to change it. And yet, there are some people who are curious, and I know that when I started learning about it, I have spent at this point like 2 years consuming thousands of hours of podcasts and books and blog posts. And so then I figured, well, if someone is just learning about this right now, like whenever it is that you're watching this, maybe I could save them some of the effort if they don't have that time to read all the things that I've read and to reflect on it as much as I have. And so just providing this crash course with all the work done for you so you can just watch and then skip ahead to the good part. And then also, I just know that when I discovered all of this information, I was really wishing that there were some younger voices out there, because a lot of people who are aware were part of the first generation, and so then they are now in their retirement years. And I feel like we young people who thought that we had a whole future ahead of us that was going to look normal are just dealing with a different type of feeling and disappointment and whatnot. So, and then finally, this thing about the destination is oblivion, so optimize the journey. What I mean about that is, I'm pretty sure this is historically true, is that when the Titanic was sinking, the orchestra still played. So that's my metaphor here, is that like, even in the case of whether you're talking about any individual life, every individual life ends. The earth will eventually not exist because the sun is going to consume it. So it isn't the point to make a thing last forever. It's about the quality of the time that it does exist. And so just as the Titanic with the musicians playing was better than if they hadn't, your yard is better with a few pollinator plants planted in it than if you don't, regardless of, you know, what else is going on around you and whether those plants survive long term. Often in our culture, when we see people fighting for the impossible, we regard that as heroic. But I am going to suggest that we don't have time for that lollygagging anymore, and we need to focus on efforts that might be humble, but at least they're possible and they will have some results, as opposed to ones that are too ambitious and therefore impossible and will have no results, because there will be a point in our lives when we're all like, dang, I'm glad I got something instead of nothing done. And so let's go ahead and identify those impossible wastes of time. The first one is to redesign. Oh, and we are going to be invoking again this metaphor of the fact that civilization operates like a space station that is just parked on Earth. So the first thing is that we cannot redesign it to be benign. This civilization cannot be compatible, and it cannot exist in harmony with its environment. It is, the self-destruction is built into the blueprint, the destructiveness is designed into the blueprint. So there's no way for it to power itself, repair itself, let alone expand without drawing from its already depleted host planet. The next one is that, okay, maybe you acknowledge this and your next impulse is like, well, I'm going to turn against the machine and I'm going to destroy the whole thing. That's possible only to an extent. You can do it locally, and in the next section I do suggest that, but you don't expect to be able to bring the whole thing down You just gotta wait for it to bring itself down, and it will. And the next thing is, on that note, don't expect it to continue functioning for your whole life. You are not going to be able to rely on the space station and the way that it works to meet your survival needs for the rest of your life. And look, I've even brought back that empty toothpaste tube analogy. It's like a reunion episode. Ta-da! I told you I would have a whole bunch of examples of how it's advantageous to just face the doom, and there are things you can do. So, I'm not going to walk through all of these, but I will give you a general tour of this beautiful visual that I have created for you. So, the red text is actions that you can take. And so I wanted to emphasize the fact that, first of all, these actions are optional. And also, you are the one who performs them. There is very little here where it's like you grab some of your neighbors and collectively do this thing. Because what I've realized is that, again, most people do not want to face this. Most people are busy telling themselves that normal can continue forever, and therefore they are unable to take the actions to prepare for the time when normal is not going to continue forever. So you're better off just kind of working on some things on your own and waiting for people to come around on their own time, but don't hold your breath. So yes, independent actions for the most part, unless you have a really great partner or friend. The next thing is the green arrows. Those show how certain actions unlock the possibility of other actions. And so primarily it's that facing our predicament and learning about it is what provides the understanding and motivation to go take the other actions. If you just kind of like rush ahead to those, you're not going to really know what you're doing and you might not understand how important they are. So you do have to face it first. And then also among those actions, there's the one of where you promote eco literacy among others, as I'm trying to do in this series, which then might complete the loop, spread the understanding and the acceptance so that more people can then go out and do whatever feels right to them in the world. And then finally, the blue arrows and the blue text shows you these benefits that you could potentially achieve. And you'll note that you already access one simply by facing reality, which is the relief from cognitive dissonance. And then, if you choose to go on and take any of the other optional red actions, you can maybe access those blue benefits. And so, a note about the benefits. First of all, they are potential and not guaranteed. And then also, again, they are mainly for you. I think we have this impulse to like, I need to go out and save the world or save my town. And I think it's better. Well, some of these are just for you, and then other ones might have larger benefits, but again, that's not so sure. And so once you focus small, you can be sure to achieve that stuff. And so, as I've noted, some of them are just put you in a better mental and spiritual state. Some of them put you in a better physical state. And so that's why it's also, I've said here, a less bad experience of the process and a less bad process. So when I say less bad experience of the process, I mean that you aren't really changing anything about the events that are going on in the world, but you do have control over how those events impact you, maybe. And so it's about leveraging that, controlling what you can there to have a better experience of the world events. Like if you think about the COVID lockdowns, like where were you at that time? Would there have been a more fun place to be? Could you have maybe stocked up on more snacks and toilet paper or whatever? And then also the way down on that list of actions are ones that could actually create a less bad process of collapse, because it's going to happen no matter what. But as I've said, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. We don't know whether we are going to get like a super chaotic, tragic experience, or maybe just a gradual, still painful, but not as bad as it could possibly be. And who knows, maybe you can just send some good vibes out there through these actions. It can't hurt, especially if you enjoy these actions, like I've kind of enjoyed making these videos. And then it would steer things towards a better outcome. So, for example, like I said, with the Titanic analogy, um, could you promote slightly better balance in the world? Pollinator garden in your yard versus no pollinator garden in your yard. Great. That was that you tip the balance just a little bit in favor of the community of life on the planet as opposed to the civilization machine. And then also all these wild cards about human behavior. There is going to become a point, I think, when we are clearly in decline and people are going to look for explanations, and leaders and interest groups will try to provide them. And maybe if this kind of information, which is actually accurate and makes sense if you stop and think about it, if this is more widespread and gets shared the way that sourdough baking videos got shared during COVID or Tiger King was a thing, then we wouldn't have as much scapegoating. We'll probably have some, but maybe we would have less. And uh, that is it. On my Substack, I have a lengthier, like truly lengthier discussion of each of these with lots more links. And I'm just going to close this whole series now with a few more of my favorite quotes.